My hair's weird. My hair's weird. Hey, everybody, I've got weird hair. I should put my glasses on,
I got
too.
a weird face.
I've got, like, my hair was up in a bun. And so now it's like got this weird thing happening.
And I shaved my beard for like the first time in years. So now I have this
Right.
weird mustache thing. And it's
I
weird.
know. I like it, though.
Yeah, I don't have to look at myself usually that much. So this is different.
It is.
Anyways, hi.
Nobody's watching yet. But
Oh, whatever.
that's okay. Hi. So my wolf, somebody liked it, but they're not watching. Hi, whoever liked it. My Wolf Hall recap videos have been pretty popular the last couple of weeks since I was doing The Mirror and the Light season 2 of Wolf Hall. Got a hair glowing. Anyway, and so I decided to do season 1 because some people in the comments asked me to do season 1, and I thought it would be fun. And this guy is the person I'm married to, and he is not a Tudor history fan.
No. Nor a history fan much.
No, on one of our first dates, he asked me what the point of history was.
I did.
I've still been married to him for 18 years.
I like math, and she kind of doesn't get the point of math.
No, I like math. I like the history of math. But yeah, math made my head hurt. Didn't we get an email one time from a listener who said that they really liked the little math references that they were a mathematician. Anyway, so the point is, he's joining me now to do the Wolf Hall season 1 recap because it's winter break and you're here so you can do it. So we started watching season 1. We thought we would get the whole episode in the first episode.
Oh wow.
3-card trick.
It is tough.
And some people will know we did watching the Tudors together, where we would watch the Tudors and he would talk to me about it afterwards, and we had made it into a podcast.
Yeah, and basically I ask the questions a non-history person might ask because I am a non-history person and I like asking questions.
Right. And so we thought we would do the same thing. So we turn it on and we're all ready and la 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 la.
And I had a page of notes after like 5 minutes.
And how many show how many notes you have?
I have 4 pages of notes on the first half of
and we only got through the first
episode.
So we might not get this done over winter break.
Yeah, it was pretty dense. It's a lot more dense than the Tudors. I've noticed that the Tudors is more like entertainment and this is more informational. I mean, it's not informational, it's still entertaining, but it's dense. So anyhow.
So we're going to basically do like we did with that watching the Tudors, where you're going to ask me some questions.
And we're going to kind of go through the order of events as they are presented on the show,
and some of which I might have to look up because you told me a brief, but I don't know all of these. I haven't looked at them.
So here we go. All right. So we start out in 1529. I love that they have dates because I'm oblivious. So we start 1529. That's neat. There's 20. So I did not realize Henry was married to Catherine for 20 years.
1509 they got married. Yep.
Wow, that's a long. I thought it was like 5 years or something like that.
Nope.
Okay, so 20 years. And how old were they both when they got married?
Henry was 18 and Catherine was, I think, 24. I think she was 6 years older than him.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise. But she had been married to
Arthur in 1501. No, not years.
Oh.
So she came over and married Arthur in 1501, and they were married for like 2 months.
And then there was like a big gap of
and during all that time it was her wilderness years where she didn't know whether or not she was going to go back to Spain. Henry VII wanted to retain the dowry and the
you don't want to mess up the whole contract and stuff.
Right. And so he was like, well, she can just marry my other son. Well, they had to get a dispensation for that. But then what happened was Henry VII didn't value the relationship because Isabella, it was Ferdinand and Isabella that united the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon. And Isabella died, and Ferdinand wasn't necessarily going to inherit Castile and
so it wasn't
became less valuable. Yeah. And so then he was like, well, let's him and Hall and blah, blah, blah. And during all of that time, so Henry was like, looking up to this woman 6 years older than him. She was like on a pedestal, and that's what they say. That's what he says. And then he became king. And
I just can't imagine it being like 13 and there's a 19-year-old girl who you're going to marry.
Right.
Like you're 14 and she's 20 and like just.
Yeah.
All right. And then there was 2 whole years of petitioning the Pope to get the.
There was more than that, but when they open up, because it started in 1527 and they didn't actually get married until 1533.
Jeez Louise. So it was like 6 years.
Anne waited for 6 years.
yeah, all this,
Or
I had no
late
idea this was like a
1532
long,
with their secret wedding that they had in
well,
after
many,
France.
many
But
years.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
many years.
Yeah. And then the third line I wrote, I think this is going to be hard. And
You wrote, I think this is going to be hard.
yeah, and it really was.
Yeah, it was.
I'm amazed at the set design and the costumes. Like
Yeah.
it seems like I'm there.
It does.
Like the Tudors, just I know, I like just comparing this. It's my only comparison.
Right.
Tudors was just so much more like glitzy versus this seems so real or whatever. So, and I get like more of a feel, I feel like, of how it was back then. Like, did everyone just bust in and make declarations all the time? Like, it just seems like at any time someone's going to kick in your front door and say, declaration. We're taking everything. I get this is a TV show and there's dramatic events, but like, I guess, did they really kind of, not like they kicked in the door, but did they really just show up at Wolsey and like, all right, give us back the seal, give us back all your stuff, get out of this house?
I mean,
like,
if you were being arrested, they didn't want to give you notice.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. But
and it's not like they had email that they could send you an email to tell you it was coming.
Yeah. All right. It seems also quick.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea if like, so in the show, Thomas Cromwell was right next to Wolsey, and he like leans over and says, "Get a written request."
Yeah.
So, do you have any idea if that was like a real occurrence?
I don't. But the thing, thank you. I'm shedding a lot. So the thing about Wolf Hall, it's this brilliant. Each of the books won the Booker Prize, and Hilary Mantel, rest in peace. She's no longer with us, which is sad. But she's a brilliant writer, and she really wanted to do like a psychological profile of Cromwell. So it's historical fiction, and a lot of it is filled in. And like Tony Riches writes historical fiction. He said that, well, quote I love that he told me once was, historical fiction fills in the details that the documents don't have, right? Like puts the flesh on the bones of the documents. And so I think Cromwell, that was the kind of thing he would have done. He was a lawyer. He was, always trying to figure out.
So it's like it's more about painting the picture of the character of Cromwell than it is about the specific events.
Exactly. And
so
that
he might have done something.
He might have done something like that, but I don't have the exact details.
We don't have a written record of the side combos.
Tudor Nerd says the fact they were married that long makes it even worse. And I believe that Henry was married to Catherine longer than, absolutely. He was. Yeah. He was married to Catherine longer than all the other wives combined.
Yeah. And
because he died in 1547. Yeah. So that was only 14. Yeah.
So wait, hold on. 20. I can't. Oh, it just makes me hate him so much more.
I know.
Like we've been married for 18 years. And they were married for like 24 or something.
Yeah. Right.
And how much younger than her was Anne?
Oh, she was born. She was probably about 15 years younger. She was, they say like 1501 is one of the dates for her. And Catherine was born in 1485, 16.
So trading you in for.
No. Trading you in. We can make jokes like that because we love you. Oh, somebody just stopped watching after that. They said, that's it. We're done with that. That's funny.
And so my question about Cromwell and Wolsey, did they were that close? Like I never really understood that before.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
I guess Wolsey kind of made Cromwell, and he was just his right-hand man who.
Let me turn that down. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, Cromwell rose through the ranks with Wolsey and stayed with him until the end, and then he transferred his loyalty to Henry and became the king's man. But I mean, I think he would have stayed with Wolsey as long as he could, and then that becomes a thing that happens throughout the books and this show is like, where was his loyalty? Was he loyal to Henry? Was he loyal to Wolsey because Wolsey's falling? And
he was very loyal.
Yes.
So it's like.
But that is one of the things too. When you look at the people who were executed with Anne, they were Wolsey's enemies. So when Cromwell had the opportunity to bring those people down later, like he didn't forget.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's, a lot of people say that he was loyal to him that much. Yeah.
And then so that was that York Place that we were at the beginning, like where they were dismantling things, and that was just them like taking everything because
and
like they felt like it,
yes,
putting things in boxes and stuff.
Hello, someone. Oh, a Time Lord boy. Hi, hello. Yeah, and that York Place is now, I think, Whitehall, right? Whitehall is used to be York Place, so Whitehall Palace in London, by Westminster Abbey and all that is where the government seated. That was,
but I guess
Wolsey's
like
York Place.
I just so they would roll in and say, all right, you are out of here, and then just strip the whole place bare, and then what? So that whoever occupied it next could put in their stuff.
Yep.
And then they'd ship this off to
because
storage.
also, like, you got to remember that stuff didn't necessarily belong to you. Like, as Wolsey even said in the show, it all came from the king.
No,
And
I
so,
understand. I just it all just seems
logistically.
Yeah, just logistically, it seems like they kick you out and just send someone else in and leave all the tapestries. Like, not go out.
They probably had to take an inventory, make sure nothing was stolen. You didn't take anything along.
Okay. Do we know if Wolsey was that positive? He seemed like a very positive, optimistic person. Do we have any idea if he was actually like that? And
I mean, he was another one that was a self-made man, right? You had to have a certain amount of, to be a self-made person in Tudor England, you had to have a certain amount of belief in yourself. He was a butcher's son from Ipswich and was really intelligent and made it through, and became the second most powerful person in the country.
So Wolsey was a butcher's son.
Yes.
But Cromwell was a blacksmith's son. And he was saying, I'm glad because you're lower. So a blacksmith would have been lower than a butcher.
Yeah.
Because he'd like sweat more.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. Remember that crazy bit in the Tudors where they had Wolsey taking his life? No idea why they did that in the story. I know, it's so unfair to him. Although I think some people at the time said there might have been a rumor. I have to look that up. We talked about that in that episode of Watching the Tudors. I had looked it up, that there had been a rumor, because in that episode of the Tudors, they showed Wolsey taking his own life when he died, which that was such a mortal sin at that time. I don't think he would.
I remember talking about that.
Yeah.
So then they were in a boat and they were talking to a guy named George. I just wondered if he was a significant person.
George Cavendish is the person he was a chronicler, and he wrote the biography of Wolsey, the seminal major, the life of Cardinal Wolsey.
Okay, so it might have just showed that he was around.
Yeah.
All right, then we switch to I guess a flashback.
Yeah.
Of Wolsey talking about early. So the Harry, is it Harry Percy or Henry Percy?
I think it's the same, but yeah.
Okay, kind of the same, like Jack and John or something. Yeah. So what was that? So Percy was like some nobility.
The Percy
or something?
family they held the north from Scotland. They were like the main lords of the north,
that region.
Of that, yeah.
Okay.
And they were one of the most powerful families in the north. And Anne came back, and I see you've got this Anne to Ireland. Anne came back to England from France to marry her cousin Butler, who was had a claim in a place in Ireland, a dukedom in Ireland.
So they were just looking for a good marriage,
and they were trying to clear up. There was some problem with the claim where if he married her, it would all be settled.
Yeah.
And so that's what they were trying to marry Anne to her cousin and get that all handled. And so she comes back, and she had some time at court where they were working out the marriage contract. And during that time, she had this thing with Henry Percy. And he was way out of her league, ridiculously out of her league. And it became a thing where maybe they took oaths to each other. Maybe they actually pledged to each other. Back then, for a marriage to actually be a marriage, you didn't have to have a ceremony in a church. You just had to pledge to promise in front of witnesses, and then you had to consummate it. So you could literally go into a bar and say, hey, I'm going to marry you. Hey, I'm going to marry you. Cool. Let's go back to my place. We're married. And then you would be married. And that was legal. That was the legal binding. So it didn't take a lot. So there's this idea that she maybe actually had pledged herself to him. That was really bad because he had another, he was going to marry somebody way up higher in the nobility. She wasn't that high in the nobility. I mean, her father married into the Howard family, which was a noble family. So, so Cardinal Wolsey, and Henry actually himself was pretty ticked off at her because it was messing up the whole Irish claim. It was
messing up everything.
Everything was too dramatic for that, and so they ended that in at that time.
All right, and then Stephen Gardner was a secretary. Is he important to anything? I don't know. I just wrote his name down.
Yeah. He'll be important later.
Okay.
He was stayed a strong Catholic. He served under Mary. He's going to be seminal or important. I said the word seminal twice now.
Yes,
is that a word? It sounds like court. He's going to be important in Cromwell's downfall. They become enemies.
Okay.
And yeah, but they had both worked for Wolsey.
So then I became like really kind of confused. Like what did Wolsey do? Like
For Henry?
Yeah, like everything?
Right. Yeah. So Henry takes the throne. He's 18. He had been raised after his brother Arthur died.
Mhm.
Henry was kept very secluded, right?
Mhm.
He wasn't allowed to even go out jousting. He wasn't even allowed to train,
just
right?
since they didn't want anything to happen to him.
Right, exactly. So he's very secluded. His father also was very tight with money. And didn't spend a lot on him, especially after Henry's mother died. It was just, Henry VII and the son, and Henry VII failing health. It wasn't a very happy place, the court, right? And so then 1509, Henry becomes king, Henry VIII, and people are just so excited. Here's this amazing, new, young, vibrant, healthy 18-year-old prince. He's got this beautiful queen, and Henry himself was just like, he was like, yeah, I don't need to, I don't care about government. Like, there's this Wolsey guy. He can take care of it for me. Like, cool.
So
I'm just going to joust and party and hang out with the ladies.
So he did like everything, and he was a babysitter.
Yes, pretty much.
Well,
he managed.
He tried to.
Yeah, he managed government for Henry.
He just kind of did. Yeah. And Henry is like, well, I can't do all that. Well, you figure it out. Like, I mean, kind of.
Yeah,
all right.
For sure.
Holy cow.
There's more comments. They were from Northumberland, near where I'm from. Oh, nice. Nice. Wasn't there a thing, though, where you had to, religious ceremony, it was more valid? I think that came later. I think that was like with the possibly. I would have to look into that, and I'm going to make myself a note. I know that in terms of just the legal part of it, all you needed was witnesses and consummation. And maybe if you had a religious ceremony, there was something with the church that it became more valid. But for just the legalese, that was all you needed. Yeah. I'm writing it down.
All right. And then was there any significance to Cromwell, like him Wolsey calling Cromwell a dog?
I just think that's a Hilary Mantel thing, that just to show that they were both low-born, and that he was low-born.
And did Cromwell wear a beret often?
Yeah, there's a very famous portrait of him. That's a funny question. That has a hat similar to that. Too. Yeah, it did. So this is the portrait of Cromwell. See, he's got like that little.
I remember that picture.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
I'm showing the famous portrait of Cromwell, which if
can you show them, or is it like copyright?
No, it's not copyright. It's that one. Warren Cromwell. Yeah. So it does look like a beret. Wait, just.
Okay. And then was it all like the accurate? This seems like much more accurate than the Tudors. Like it's actually okay. So Cromwell really did spend 12 years abroad. Mm-hmm. He was a blacksmith's son.
Yeah.
He was from Putney. Did you say Putney? Is that a place in England?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the river.
Okay, on the River
Thames.
Just checking. Mm-hmm. And he had a good memory that he learned in Italy.
Yeah. Well, I don't.
I mean, I don't know that that he learned how to get a good memory in Italy.
He was very, very intelligent, and we did that in synchronized. We both
synchronization.
And there's like missing times in his life too. Nobody's quite sure what he did in Italy. And then he spent some time in the Low Countries. He learned how to be a merchant. He learned the wool trade. He learned everything. Yeah. That's cool. He had street smarts. He didn't necessarily have.
You went to Europe and learned a bunch of stuff, and now you're massively successful. Talking about Wolf.
No, right.
Would people really? So then Cromwell, and this is like, so this whole show is mostly kind of about Cromwell.
Yes,
this whole show starts with Wolsey, but it's setting up Cromwell.
Yes.
Okay. Then Cromwell had a little dog in his lap.
He did.
Would people have little dogs?
They did. And in fact, Anne Boleyn, one of the more famous little dogs, is Anne Boleyn had a little dog called Porky, but it was after, because it always looked curious. And it was, so she called it Porky because she thought it was asking a question. Porky.
Yeah.
Right. But she called it Porky and something like that. And anyway, when she felt threatened, somebody killed her dog. Yeah, but she had a little dog. And so, yes, there's lots of portraits from this time. This was when people started getting their portraits done. And so many of the portraits, people have their dogs. These little tiny dogs.
And were they mostly like smaller? I mean, I guess they wouldn't want to be feeding these giant
things.
Well,
no, the larger dogs were working hunting dogs.
I see. So they would do stuff.
Right. But the smaller dogs were kind of little lap dogs. Yeah.
All right.
We have a large dog sleeping right there.
And then, so they had like, Cromwell talking to his wife at this point, and he's like just saying, like I want more out of life kind of thing. Is
Yes.
that like what do we know what his plan was, what his idea was? Like, I mean, I'm sure he didn't imagine it would all kind of spiral out of control, but it just seems
something that's interesting because this comes up in the books too, and as Cromwell is okay, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's fine, please.
Like spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Does Cromwell like die? Like
not in this season.
No, like period.
Yes.
I know everyone dies at one point, but like he dies a premature death because of his political aspirations.
Yes, one could say that. Yes.
Okay, I just I forget. So go on with what you're.
Well, that's he got to the very top, and he replaced Wolsey as Henry's right-hand man. Eventually.
After More.
Yeah, More doesn't last for very long.
I'm not saying
but
so it was Wolsey, More, Cromwell.
More never took on the same role that Wolsey did. He was just the Lord Chancellor.
Oh, okay.
Wolsey was Lord Chancellor. He was like the master secretary of he had like 18
he was
titles.
Just like
he was
everything.
Like everything. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Cromwell took that on, and he could have not, and he could have stepped away and been satisfied with what he had and gone to live a nice country life at Laund Abbey, which was where he wanted to go. And
so he could have just taken.
But then how do you get out of
the $1 million and quit?
But how do you get out of that situation when you're in it too, right? Like it's kind of like, how do you just say to Henry, like, hey, I'm quitting. Hey, Henry, please accept my resignation.
You just throw someone else under the bus and make it seem like the best decision would, make Henry think he thought of it. And it was a great decision. Never did. He was smart enough.
Wasn't he essential after he brought Anne of Cleves? Was he? Yeah, exactly. Henry thought, I don't want to give too many spoilers, but I mean, yes, Cromwell is going to be executed. The Anne of Cleves marriage was his undoing. He was pushing for a Protestant marriage. It was very important for the alliance at the time. And then it became less important. And Henry was offended that Anne of Cleves didn't recognize his romantic gesture. That was what I did last week's episode, or 2 weeks ago. If it was called like he said I like or not. He was really ticked off at Cromwell for making him get married, and then Cromwell's enemies including Stephen Gardiner, saw an opportunity to pounce. And
I hope the people watching caught all that, because it just went right over my head.
Well, they're Tudor history nerds. They probably
no, I know. I'm sure they got it, and just so everyone knows, I know that I live with her and am married, but my only reference to the history of the Tudors is this television show, The Tudors.
You come to TudorCon and host it every year.
I don't pay any attention. And I'm paying attention to the people online.
Yeah.
So I can't pay attention to the content.
Yeah.
And I also we have not finished the show, The Tudors. So I do not know what happens. Like, I just don't know. Anne of Cleves doesn't exist to me yet, because I've never seen her.
We ended it with Jane Seymour dying, didn't we?
Yeah,
I mean, that was too emotional.
I don't even know who Anne of Cleves.
Yeah,
I don't even know who this person is. So we'll get there one of these days.
I get messages so often from people. When are you guys going to do the next season of Watching the Tudors?
They're going to be upset when they're doing Wolf Hall. All right, we'll get to that soon.
Now that our daughter wants to spend all of her time in her room,
we have more
time now.
Yeah. All right.
Benefits of that.
Moving along. Who are all these people in this place? Like his wife, they're like sitting at the table, and his daughters are like reading books, and there's people bringing him food.
Yeah, he had a very large household. I mean, so one thing about that wealthy people at this time, he had a ward. He had several wards, he mentioned.
At this point in the show, what is he? He's a government person.
Yeah, he's working for Wolsey at this point.
Okay, so Wolsey would have said, you work for me. Mm-hmm. Here, you don't need to live in that little shack. Come stay at this place.
No, but he didn't have a shack because he was already successful, which is how he caught Wolsey's eye. Right.
Okay. So you don't live in this small mansion.
Right.
Come live in this big mansion.
And he
with all these. I mean, that's how that would kind of happen.
So.
I know you weren't there, but
yeah. I mean, he was a successful attorney. He was a lawyer. And
so you could just afford these giant places with 10. Like, how many staff did he
have?
Like 10 people or something?
Yeah. I mean, one thing is having staff. Then, if you had the space, I don't know that it would have been expensive as having staff now, because you didn't have to pay. You were more just like looking out for people, giving
you
them,
almost gave them a place to stay,
and like, yeah, and like watched out for them and helped to raise. And that's what like a ward was. And so being a ward, also you would get money for that. So like Rafe Sadler was his ward.
Yeah.
Rafe Sadler's father had paid him to take him in and raise him.
Okay.
So if you could afford it, if we like say we knew somebody that, and Hannah like looked up to somebody who had a career that was something that she was into, we could say, here, we'll pay you $25,000 or something.
And she's just going to live with, like, raise you kind of, and teach you how to be.
So that was what people would do too, to make some extra money. And then you would have servants, you would have relatives, and then also petitioners. People were always showing up asking, like, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? So at any given time, there was
all sorts of
100 people hanging around.
Jeez. That's wild.
And, I did a recent video on the concept of privacy in Tudor England, because it certainly didn't really exist the way we know it. However, that's one of the things that's fascinating about this time is it was starting to. And one of the random reasons that started that? The chimney. I know, weird connections, because the chimney, before the chimney, you just had an open fire in a room. And everybody was around that open fire. So the medieval style where the Lord sleeps with the cows, with the people, with the servants, with the family. And maybe the Lord has a little side chamber. But then the chimney made it possible to have floors, right? And independent heating on each of those floors. Then you start to get the upstairs downstairs situation. The people who are the people who live there are like, hey, maybe we want to be separate from the servants, and hey, maybe the people we want. And it's fascinating. So there was this whole concept of privacy that started as we know it now, that started in part because of chimneys.
You could split them in half, like on the back and the front. So you could have two sides of the house and 2 floors.
And none of that was,
and one chimney.
And none of that was possible with an open fire with just a hole in the roof.
And then you'd have to have multiple.
And then there was also increased literacy, which led to letter writing. And that on the back of the humanist beliefs in like people, there started to be this inward life that people never had before, of like valuing their feelings and valuing like themselves as individuals, which had never existed before. And that also started to lead to privacy. Anyway, so he had all kinds of people running around his house.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. We'll try and go through this faster. Sorry, I get sidetracked.
Yeah, it's like half an hour. And
I was like, let's try and do it 20 minutes max. Sorry.
And then he really had like 2 daughters and a wife.
And
okay.
Tyndall's New Testament.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well,
he was like, hey, there's Tyndall's New Testament. It's in English. You should read it.
Yeah, Tyndall
doesn't say nothing about nuns.
No, I mean, this was when the New Testament, when people were starting to print Bibles in English. And
can you imagine the scrambling of like all the people who were like, oh God, don't let the people know what's actually in the Bible.
And they made it illegal, and they burned it. And like Tyndall's Bible was illegal to have. And it's kind of interesting because like,
hi, Jenny.
Because like 10 years later, Henry would have his own English Bible that Cromwell pushed him to have, but Tyndall was executed. So Anyway,
and while someone mentioned it very organically, for those watching and don't know, there's a 2025 Tudor planner on sale right now at tudorfair.com.
Oh my gosh.
$49.95.
No, not that $39.95.
Yeah, and you can get lots of and it's really lovely.
And there's stickers in the back. Show the people the stickers. I didn't thank you, Jenny, for making that happen organically. Anyway, so okay. So Tyndall's Bible was that, and yes, Cromwell.
And was that like the first like big widely distributed?
Kind of. There had been ones like in the 14th century with the Lollards, and the 15th century saw
to the non-history buff, like I've only ever heard of the Gutenberg Bible. I thought that like
that was the first thing that was printed. That wasn't in English. Okay. That was the first thing that was printed on a printing press, was the Gutenberg Bible.
Oh, so that wasn't in English?
No.
And they didn't like have that in every hotel room or anything?
No.
Okay, I don't know. They didn't hand that out they didn't just start printing it and going door to door?
No.
Okay.
And there had been movements earlier to have the Bible in the vernacular, and it was always shot down because people didn't want. Yes.
Why
and
would you?
Then Martin Luther and the Reformation, and there was just that on top of the, like I talked about, the humanist movement, and people have a right to have a relationship with God directly, blah 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 blah. There you go. It's
a pretty, I feel like it's a pretty ballsy move to have like a document, like, guys, everything is in here, like all the secrets and all the stuff. Let me tell you what they are. And then tell them like it's totally not that. Like, that's just takes some guts. And
it's kind of like Joseph Smith.
Like, just hoping they'll never,
It's like Joseph Smith with the Book of Mormon. He's like, God told me that there's these plates. They're in my backyard under my tree. And I have to also admit that all I know about the Book of Mormon came from the musical The Book of Mormon and South Park.
And clearly everything I know about history came from bad television.
South Park and But I think there was something, wasn't it, with the Book of Mormon that he said you couldn't show it to anybody? You couldn't let anybody translate
no one can see it. Not the Book of Mormon, the gold plates. You still can't see it.
Right. You can't see the gold plates.
So he thought smart. He said no one can see this, so he just knows.
Right. Oh, so okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So he learned from their mistake.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
But I'm not saying that he isn't saying what is on the golden plates. See, it's less ballsy.
Right.
He doesn't have an actual set of plates that disprove all the things he's saying.
Right. Gotcha.
That would be a bad plan.
Gotcha. No, you're right. I'm however people want to get to truth, there's multiple ways to truth. It's all great.
Yes, there is. And it's fun with golden
golden tablets. Amen. I don't.
So speaking of golden writings and stuff, did people just have are those illuminated manuscripts with like gold leaf and stuff?
Yeah.
Like,
they're super
that's
expensive.
Just what kids read or something, like kids like that. I mean,
I
I don't mean normal children.
Yeah.
But
well, so Cromwell was unique in that he educated his daughters.
And that would be like, oh, let's learn from a book, and they just open something like that. That is wild.
And that is why printing became so miraculous, because you didn't have to have a handwritten thing like that would take hours and hours and hours and cost the equivalent of thousands and thousands of dollars.
And so it really just blows me away, like how, so they were in this giant room, and there was a guard standing near the door, and there was all the tapestries on the wall. Like, it's hard for me to fathom the disparity, like, because weren't like normal people were like in like mud huts or something.
I think it was.
I don't know. I'm asking you. Like, it seems like there are these wealthy people, and I know we have billionaires these days, but it just seems like the disparity. Like, you're living in this giant like castle, what I would describe as a castle, with like dozens of people working for you, and like gold booklets that your kids are reading, and then like everyone else is in like a shack. Like, I just feel like, as much as we talk about wealth disparity these days, to me that seems like way crazy, like way worse than anything these days.
I don't think people were living in mud shacks.
I don't know.
No, I know. I'm saying, and yes, there definitely was a lot of disparity between rich and poor, for sure.
Is it talked about if it's like greater than, or
it's so hard
to compare?
It's so hard to compare, because like the other thing, you read in books where they say like a pound back then was the equivalent to like 800 pounds.
Oh, it's hard to quantify, for sure.
Like, food, for example, ate up a much greater portion of the budget for average people than it does today, because food was expensive and scarce. And so you would spend 60% of your income on food. And that's where you spent your money, versus today there's like housing crisis and stuff like that, and people are spending more of their income on housing. So
it's just really hard to compare, because people weren't worried about getting a house back then.
Right. They were worried about
gather
eating
some things and like,
make something out of wood and all of that. I mean, brick was expensive, stone was expensive, but so you could make yourself a wooden house with a thatched roof, and but if you having enough food to make it through the winter for a poor person would be a struggle. Also, back then people didn't pay for healthcare so much like they do today, because you just go to you didn't have physicians, or at least like they do today in the US. You wouldn't have like physicians. You would go to like your local healer kind of person and pay them with turnips or something. So it's just, people spend their money on different things. So it's hard to quantify wealth disparity then
from
versus
now.
now, because it was just different.
Seems so wild to me how rich these people were.
Mm-hmm.
I can skip over a couple of this.
Yeah.
So what Wolsey was around forever?
Yeah, Wolsey first rose in the court of Henry VII. And
like, because he was talking about Catherine arriving, and he was already someone.
I think he came at the end of the 1490s. I think he came to court as a young, he wasn't the head then, but he rose quickly under Henry VIII. Henry VII had hired him for some things.
So he was kind of like established before Henry VIII came, and they like probably knew each other from around court, or like, oh, you're my dad's dude who does this or that.
And then when Henry was looking for people to help run,
and he's like, hey, I'll help with this, I'll help with that. Oh, I'll take care of that. And all right. And
it's
did
people helped Henry? Yeah, I know. Like people helped Henry in the toy. He had like the groom of the stool was.
Did Catherine really blame Wolsey, or do we know that? Like, was she mad at him? Like, or is that just kind of?
I don't know. He later on, part of Wolsey's downfall was he was corresponding with her, and he was like saying he was trying to help her, and that was seen as treasonous. So I don't know whether he felt bad about it, but yeah.
Okay. And then someone, I forget who was talking to who, but they mentioned a rumor about Catherine wanting to send the head of the King of Scotland's.
That was the Battle of Flodden in 1513.
Okay.
Henry was campaigning in France. I think that was around Bologna. And there was a battle with James IV of Scotland. That's where he died. And Catherine, they say she was regent at the time. And so she led the troops.
Regent, I don't know. What is the regent?
That means she's in charge when Henry's away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
he was away. And so she like led she didn't literally lead troops,
but it was her command. Okay.
And it was kind of cool because she was, came from a warrior queen. Isabella was a warrior queen. And so she was like living into this warrior queen thing. And she killed, and she didn't literally kill James IV, but James IV.
Her forces
had killed James IV. And that, I think she wanted to send the head to Henry in France.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
I know. Everything's exciting. It's
an exciting time. It's an exciting drink. Mystic Mango. Non-sponsored plug. It's really good.
You like that flavor?
I do.
What did you think about the cherry one I got?
That was really good too. It's a different brand.
Okay.
All right. Skip some of this. Esher Place.
Esher Palace. That was Wolsey. It was in Surrey.
And that was his residence in exile. So like how long was he in exile?
I mean, for a bit,
like
he went
years,
no. He went back to York then and just said, okay, you can be Archbishop of York, but you don't have any of your government.
Wasn't like bad right away. It was like,
no, it was still bad because he was like stripped of all of his government jobs, but he had his job of Archbishop of York from the Pope. So Henry couldn't take that away.
I just mean bad. I mean, it wasn't like they showed up, you're in the dungeon, we're chopping off your head.
No,
it's like they showed up and said, we're taking all your things.
Yeah.
You can go run a government building like wherever.
Yeah.
And, have like a tiny house and 2 servants or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was exile, like that.
Well, he thought of it was exile.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, probably because he missed all of his government work.
Yeah.
But.
And it's also dark. I know you said that, like because it was dark. Just everything's dark, like the scenes. There's just no light.
Because they didn't have electricity.
Yeah. It's just, I can't. It all just seems so depressing. It just makes me depressed. God, and then we haven't even gotten to the depressing part.
We'll go through that quickly.
And then Thomas More.
Yes.
Who's Thomas? So, I mean, I remember, who's Thomas More?
Thomas More was a philosopher, humanist. He wrote Utopia. And in the Tudors, we saw Thomas More being like Henry's tutor, helping him write the defense of the Pope, which earned him the title Defender of the Faith. And that's who Thomas More was. And he was famous throughout Europe.
And he was very like religious, like pious.
He was a reformer in that he was a humanist. So he believed in like people learning, but he was definitely Catholic in
he wasn't like, I hate the Pope.
No.
He just was like, I would like people to have some...
And he was executed then because of not after Henry married Anne Boleyn and she was crowned. Henry made everybody take an oath that they recognized Henry as the head of the church, and that Anne was queen and all of that. And Thomas More refused to do it. So he was executed.
And I don't know that that's worth discussing. Is it worth discussing? Like, all the people who wanted Wolsey dead, like there was the Suffolks, I think he said, and the Boleyns. Was there just a whole cast? And it was basically just, he ran stuff. If people didn't like the way they were treated by him, they were like, I hate that dude. I want him out of there. And they just all ganged up kind of thing. Like,
yes. And also the other part is that Wolsey did come from nothing. He didn't have a noble family behind him.
So that was extra. And that's challenging to the establishment because it's like, we can't be letting these upstart blacksmiths and butchers come into our royal thing and ruin it because they don't know. All right, that old money, new money stuff.
And then when it does start to fall, there's nobody to stick up for you because you don't have a powerful family.
Your network. Yeah. And then so Cromwell knew of More, like just from around.
Yeah, they knew each other from work and stuff.
Dealings.
Yeah.
Okay.
They would have been around.
And then the musician was like talking really bad about Wolsey, was it, or Cromwell?
About Cromwell, and his name was Mark, and he played the lute. And later there would be another famous, the same Mark, that was taken down with Anne Boleyn.
So, but what he was saying was that like indicative of how people thought about Cromwell?
Yes.
Okay.
And it also shows that he has made an enemy, and he will not forget.
I see. Okay. Then we go to Antonio Bonvisi. Was he a real person?
He was a merchant, a trader. He was from an Italian family, but I think he was born in England. And and he was a Catholic. He was actually exiled under Edward the Sixth, and then came back under Mary. And he was a very wealthy merchant trader person.
So I don't know. I saw your question. What brand is it? This is GT's brand, and then the other stuff that I got was this cherry brand, and I forget what brand that was, but it's really good. I'll go look right before we leave. So the dinner at his house.
Yes.
I know you did not get invited to dinners.
I was not invited to dinners back then. Maybe in another life.
From what you know, would that be what like a fancy dinner like that would have looked like with all that candles and candlesticks and food and everything? Like, I just didn't know if like in my head you were a king and you had all that spread, or you were a pauper and there's like nothing in between. So this is kind of how like royalty or nobility.
So interesting. Something else I love about the 16th century is we start to see this rise of a merchant class, rise of middle class.
So there was like something in the middle.
Yes.
Like you didn't have to be a king or just eating dirt. Like you could scrape together. And it was probably a lot like rich people today, like lived on credit. Like they probably couldn't afford all those candlesticks, but they got them anyways because
well, no, I mean, you start to see merchants and traders and people who do stuff, especially in cities where there's guilds and stuff like that, and actually you can rise and be very wealthy.
And these days printers,
printers, exactly. There was a whole brewers,
and so those people, if you did,
what was it the other day? Somebody was talking something, and you were like, "What job was that?" And I said it was a wool trader. I was saying something. You were listening to me record a video, and now I can't remember Anyway,
So were these people like, would they have had like a big dinner like this? Like if they were fancy.
I mean, they didn't, then you will notice they didn't have servants serving each individual course.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't
they might have only
had
7 courses instead of 27.
And I noticed there wasn't like meat flowing all over. There was a lot of fruit.
And there was lots of candles on the table, but not around the rest of the room.
I get it.
Right?
Yeah. So
there weren't like chandeliers of candles.
It was still shabby for the royalty, but All right. All right.
And you know what? When royalty would come to those places, it would always bankrupt them. There
Yeah,
was
because they need to
cases,
set it up all nice, right?
and there were cases where, like in Elizabeth's reign, especially, where she would go around from place to place visiting her nobles and visiting places, around the countryside,
Mhm.
and people would actually say, "Don't come to me this year," and they would ask, like, they wouldn't say to Elizabeth directly, but they would
Maybe
ask
they'd
her
tell the
staff
other
and stuff. They'd
people.
be like, "Make sure she goes somewhere else because I can't afford her to come
Oh,
this
how
year."
funny.
Yeah.
All right. And then were women allowed at the table? Like,
heaven forbid. No, at private places like that, where I mean, possibly, it depends what they were going to talk
Okay.
about. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And
And how
then
liberal the men
yeah,
were.
so then Cromwell really lays into more.
Yes.
And was that like accurate? Was that fair? Him saying like,
Yes.
look, you said you were just this pious guy who wants to do all this, and now look at you. Like,
I remember when we did Watching the Tudors, and I kind of came out a little bit against Thomas More because I did think he was a little bit of a hypocrite in that. And I
Yeah.
mean, I know that was TV as well, and this is TV,
Mhm.
but yeah, Thomas More is a complicated individual because, like many successful people who are brilliant in one way, they have some problems in some other areas. And Thomas More was not very nice to his wife, and he was not very nice to his children, and he did not live, let's say, a Christ-like life that he espoused to live in many ways in his life. But he was also brilliant. And so can you read the work and ignore the problems of the artist? And yeah, and he was very stubborn, and he could have just said, "Okay, Henry, you're the boss," and he never did. And I think he kind of wanted to see himself as a martyr as well, because he knew he was famous, and he knew that when he died, all of Europe would be gobsmacked, which they were, and they were all couldn't believe that Henry executed this famous. I mean, it'd be like Trump executing Elon Musk or something, because he did, like, I mean, I'm just saying that because that's like current in the news, but like he was massively famous, and he didn't agree with them, and he's like, "All right, you're getting executed."
Well,
and
I mean,
like,
it's like when I learned philosophy in school, like I learned about Thomas More, right? Thomas More and Thomas Locke are the two Thomases, or is that something else?
They're different time periods, but yeah,
no,
I guess
saying in the class philosophy there was
I suppose
two
so.
Thomases we learned about, I thought.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
There wasn't another philosophical Thomas.
I don't know. You probably know more about that than me. I remember David Hume.
Let's see.
I had philosophy class at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, Thursday, my freshman year, and I don't remember. I used to sit and write out lists of the presidents that I could remember in order because I was bored. Here's an account on Richard. Yeah. He did Moore's account on Richard III. That's where we get a lot of the information on the princes in the Tower and stuff like that. Do you agree with Hilary Mantel's portrayal of Thomas More as a villain of Wolf Hall? Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan, but personally, I mean, his work is brilliant. But
you sort of agree with the villainistic.
And he wrote the account of Richard III, and actually some recent evidence. I did a video like 2 weeks ago that came out. They call it the new smoking gun in the case against the princes in the Tower, in the case against Richard III, because some jewels were found that it was the necklace, the chain of office that belonged to the young Edward V, and it was found with somebody who had links to Richard III in their will. And the point is, it lends credence to Moore's account of Richard III because Moore had written about it. So there you go. Yes, that's true. Sorry, I'm shaking that. I just kicked it.
Okay.
What you got now?
I kind of sort of the emperor was sacking Rome.
Yeah, the sack of Rome. I did a podcast episode on that about 6 months ago.
This was 1527. Okay, and the emperor was the Holy Roman Emperor?
No. Well, yeah. So this was Charles V. Yeah. And this was during it's a series of wars called the Italian Wars. And a lot was happening during that time. The French king was taken hostage as well, like not at separate time period, but one of those things where they went into Rome and they sacked it. It was horrible. It was still to this day one of like the worst thing that ever happened in the city of Rome, even in Rome's downfall and like the Visigoths invading and stuff.
In the 1527 thing. And like what were they doing? They were just like, hey, we're going to take over. Like,
and I guess what it came from was that supposedly the soldiers hadn't been paid in like months
by Rome,
by the Holy Rome, by Charles. No, yeah. somebody, I don't know. Somehow people
were
hadn't
mad,
been paid.
and they said, let's go get Rome.
Exactly. And they got Rome, and there was
Nice.
it was horrific.
And they just killed everyone and burned it all down
Yep.
and destroyed.
Yeah, the population went for, I mean, I think it went down to like 20% of what it was even 50 years later. It was horrible.
That's crazy.
It was, and one of the things out of that was they took the Pope hostage.
And they kidnapped the Pope.
Yep.
And then Wolsey was like, hey, I'll be Pope for a couple weeks and I'll work out this divorce. That's cool.
That'll work.
My question, was that a thing? Like, he was really like, hey, I'm going to plan this?
Wolsey actually almost became Pope. Like, he had been, not during this time, but like the Pope before, but that had died before him.
They were thinking
that Henry was trying to put him forward to be Pope. Mm-hmm. And so they were thinking that he might be Pope. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, Wolsey thought that he might be able to be the Pope.
Wow, that's wild. Mm-hmm. Do we know about, were other people like, hey, I might want to be Pope? Like,
probably every country that had a link to the Pope probably had their own version of a Wolsey who was thinking that he might, but Wolsey had actually come the closest to actually being Pope.
So he kind of had maybe a chance or something.
Yeah, he probably would have been one of the senior people.
Did Anne really, so they said, oh, Anne's going to hate me about that, or does she still, did Anne, was that the beef between Anne and Wolsey?
Because she kept him from Henry Percy.
So I mean, it's just so this is just this is
hold a grudge.
No, but this is wild to me. Okay, we talk about, oh, if Henry hadn't fallen for Anne, then maybe this wouldn't have happened. If Wolsey wouldn't have got involved in this, Catholicism still might be Catholic. I mean, I'm sure at some point Reformation would have happened, but wow,
for sure. And you know what's even what else is crazy? When Anne was being taken down, they had one of the people on her trial, because it was a trial by lords, a trial of her peers had to be the lords. Henry Percy was on the jury that convicted Anne. And he apparently was a broken man after it. He died shortly thereafter. He couldn't do it. Why
do they have to do that? It's like they're just also mean.
I know. They rubbed the salt in the wound, man. Putting him on the jury of this woman he loved.
Oh, I know. Let's get her mom to chop off her head. Right. That'll be fun.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
All right. And then I thought it was really weird. They mentioned she's flat-chested sister. Was that a thing?
No, well, Mary Boleyn was very voluptuous, and she had been the one that Henry
was supposed to be set up, or
no. Just Mary Boleyn had been his mistress for years, and probably had his children, illegitimate children, and so then later he's with Anne, who was
not as voluptuous.
And she wasn't voluptuous at all. She was, and people did comment on her body not being the type, because she was like the kind of skinny early 2000s sort of model, skinny girl, and that wasn't a shape that was seen as particularly pleasing back then. Okay. And so people commented on.
So that was like a thing around,
and especially compared to her sister.
And then not Wolsey, Cromwell. Cromwell's wife was sewing in the window.
Yes.
Would that have been a thing she would have been doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Needlepoint.
And was Cromwell really estranged from his father?
Yeah. Again, that's and that's again another person. I don't know exactly but yeah, he left Putney and he never went back.
I see.
So whether or not his father tried to come to see him, he probably would have, I would think, when your son gets to be that successful.
And I guess it seems like just something I'm kind of grasping from this show more than others, even though they aren't showing the poor people or whatever. Mm-hmm. It seems like no one's ever comfortable. It just seems like they're in these uncomfortable clothes in these cold places.
We definitely have a very different idea of comfortable 21st century US.
Yeah, for sure. I get we are in the height of, it's 2 degrees out of my comfort zone right now.
And I guess that's there wasn't the expectation of comfort.
They didn't know comfort. So they were probably amazingly comfortable because they had clothes.
It's like in 500 years, if everybody's walking around with their own personal heating, air conditioning device that goes into their brain or something. And it's like, can you believe those people in the 21st century
had to wear hoodies all the time to keep themselves warm?
Exactly. Right. I mean, it's just different. And thatched bedding and all that. Like, it was super comfortable to them.
Learning about history really gives one perspective on the life they're living now.
One might say that that would be a reason for doing it.
Wow. And then I wrote, I'm so scared everyone's going to get killed. But no,
and then
they didn't have to get killed because they all just died.
Because remember, we only got through the first half.
Yeah, and I was only going to, oh, God. And then, like,
I love your notes. So, she's dead.
Yeah, well, no, he saw the ghost, and I was like, oh, God, he saw a ghost. Like, she's dead. And then I thought she's seeing things. And then I was like, was everyone in... It just seems like everyone everywhere was possibly going to die at any time.
Yeah, I mean,
like all the time.
Yeah, and that's why you were always kept your soul like ready.
Yeah.
You would say you look at these.
It's super unnerving.
You say, look at these prayers like that I was taught as a kid. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Like that was like because it might
legit a very real
and I mean these are like things that come down. Like obviously when my mom taught me that prayer in the 1970s, it wasn't like it might actually happen, but like it comes down through generations of just basic nursery rhymes and things that people are taught. And like death was ever present, and it wasn't like now. I mean, Jonathan here, wonderful man that he is, volunteers with hospice stuff, and I think we tend to put death away.
Yeah,
and people didn't have the same kind of fear necessarily. It was always there. It wasn't something you were afraid of as much. I mean, you didn't want it to happen, obviously, but you saw it happen to people all the time, and you were more. This life was practice for the next life. This life was your soul preparing.
Like you really were
so that you would go to heaven.
Get ready to get in the game because at any time you get called in.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
I can't imagine living like that.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, they probably couldn't imagine living like us.
Mm-hmm.
Like what, you guys aren't constantly thinking about the state of your soul and your relationship to God? Like,
no, we got 50 years to figure that out.
Right?
Like, we're good. All right, then the one guy says, and we're almost done. The one guy says he's going to go to the Pope. Oh, okay, so they're having the meeting of the
Protestant.
Yeah. Yeah. And the one guy says, I'm going to go to the Pope and change his thinking. What was he?
I don't know who that specific person was, but like in general, at this time, it must have been a very exciting time, also a very scary time, because there were all these meetings happening all over England, especially in hotspots like London. In Cambridge, there was a pub called the White Horse where the college students would meet, and they would all just sit and talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And this guy says, I'm going to write to this person, and that says, I'm going to write
this.
And like all of these people thinking that they were going to make these massive changes happen. And have the Pope come around their way of thinking, or have the king come
like around. They have a really good way of explaining it, and we can change the Catholic Church from within.
Because that was initially, so the idea, the term Protestant wasn't used the way we use it at that point in the 60s. I think it came later at the end. Somebody might know, but it definitely wasn't this time. They were called reformers or evangelicals, and because they wanted to reform the Catholic Church, they wanted to reform the church. Because also you got to understand the idea of another church, the Catholic Church, the word Catholic, we say it in the Episcopalian, I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. We say it with a small c because it means universal.
Yeah, the whole church. It's like the idea.
The idea that you're going to have another church. You're not going to have another, like what? That's like saying I'm going to breathe a different type of air.
Or like we live on Earth number 2, and it's like no, there's just one. Like, it's not like this and that.
I breathe strawberry air. Like, no, you don't do that. And so, people were trying to figure out how that was going to work. And then they realized that it wasn't going to work. So then they broke away.
And then,
WTF, she really died.
Yeah. like what is life back then? Like everyone just dies. Everyone's dead. Like everyone died. Like that really happened.
Yeah. He lost his wife and his daughters to the sweating sickness on like the same day. Later on too, Catherine Willoughby, she married Charles Brandon. There's a very sad story that both of her sons, they were at Cambridge, and there was another bout of the sweating sickness. It was in the 1550s, I believe. I think the late 1550s. Anyway, and she sent her sons out of Cambridge because the sweating sickness was there. And she said, go stay in the country. And they went and stayed in the country. And they both died at this country house within hours of each other. So she gets a letter that's like, sorry, both of your sons are dead.
And what What was it? Do we know what the sweating sickness is?
Yeah, that's like a big thing that people debate. So they don't know. There's some theories. It didn't exist in England before Henry VII. So the theory is that it came from the mercenary soldiers that he brought over from Germany. I think it was from Germany, that it was something that was there, and it was something that just it would make you sweat. Anne Boleyn got it and recovered. I think about 20% of people who got it did recover, but like 80% of people died.
And like it's weird because like some people wouldn't get it. I mean, you could be around sick people and like
you weirdly could. There were some people who were just naturally seemed to have an immunity to it, just like with the plague. I mean, like and
everything.
Yeah. But and they would say it was like you were merry at breakfast and dead by dinner because it just came on you, and it was just like similar to the plague, I guess, in a way. But and it was you started off feeling warm and sweating, and then you died.
Then you were dead.
Yeah, your organs just shut down, and boom, that was it.
And who was it at the end that offered to stay with her husband? John,
I think that was her sister. I think that was the wife's, like his sister-in-law or something. Yeah. And in the book, they make quite a big deal out of that relationship because Cromwell never remarried.
And did he? Was he like different person after that? Like, did he change?
I mean, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, but I mean, like historically, like was he like one person before the death of his family, and then
was
like
just
a
always
different person
kind of
after that?
He was just always. He never really showed his personal side.
But it's not like after that day he decided that he was going to declare war on.
I don't think so. I think maybe, a lot of the Reformation stuff came from him. It could have been that he was a little more devout in his faith.
Fervent.
Yeah. But I don't know that he personally changed so much after that.
Is the rest of the series as emotionally tumultuous as this?
Yeah. Let's see. That's why. Yeah. Henry was scared of dying. And he never finished making his tomb because he thought it would tempt fate. Yeah. And there were a lot of people that didn't like who was it? I was just talking to when I interviewed Helen Castor, and she was talking about Richard II, and he never named an heir, and he didn't particularly care about his wife having children. He married a 6-year-old when he was like 25 because he didn't want to tempt fate by having an heir. Oh, is that the cherry kombucha? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I think there were a couple people that were like that. So
I don't know if you were talking, someone asked earlier, this is a really good one. I've just had this today, this kombucha. So this is not sponsored. I just like this stuff.
Yeah.
And this was very good. Kavita kombucha.
Is it, how do you say it? Kombucha.
Yeah, kombucha. I don't know. I don't know how to say nothing. I say Albany.
Yeah, you do.
I say almonds.
No.
Caramel.
Albany. Anyway.
Albany, New York.
Here comes our dog.
Anyways.
Anyway.
Thank you guys for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
I hope this was fun. So that was that's where we stopped then after the
I was an absolute disaster. Snot and tears are like everywhere.
Yeah. I like
this stuff tears me up. I like comedies. I like laughing.
Yeah, watch so you don't burn your hoodie on that candle. All right.
Just on fire. Oh my god.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
If you're and we'll do this. If you guys enjoyed this, let us know, and we'll do this with the rest of the episode. What? Oh, do you think it was Cromwell, or did he just use it to save his neck? And please, that's the question of, was Cromwell ever really a true Reformation person? Because on his death, when he was dying, when he was on the scaffold, he said he died a believer in the Catholic faith. I don't know. He seemed to believe it. You can't really know somebody's heart.
Might have just been hedging his bets. Like, oh man, I'm gonna go see this dude in a second.
Yeah.
All right.
30 seconds away from meeting
going
God.
back with my old thing. I'm going.
Who knows?
It's like,
anyway. All right. Well, we're going to stop this. I said, let's do 20, 30 minutes. It's been an hour. So
yeah, there we
go. But we'll do this again. And thank you guys for watching. And we'll talk to you later.
Check out our show, Watching the Tutors, watch our podcast.
There you go.
All of that.
Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All right.
Check out the online shop.
Okay.
Subscribe.
This isn't okay. Goodbye. Have a good one. See ya. Bye.